Hi, Tom Trento once again with David Horowitz, the Horowitz Freedom Center. Be sure to go there, ladies and gentlemen. And there's a whole variety of websites that David, through the years, has put together that will equip any patriot, any analyst, any serious researcher in looking at jihadi organizations, Islamic organizations, Marxist organizations, anti-American organizations, and develop the proper information from which to argue effectively for a constitutional republic. David, good to see you again. How you feeling about things 85 days out from the election?
As every day goes by, it's more likely that Trump will win.
I know you're an agnostic, but from your lips to God's ears, okay?
Now, Chicago and Portland, those mayors need to be put in jail.
You know, I went to Moody Bible Institute in Chicago and worked on Michigan Avenue, the 444 building, right where they were smashing and looting all the very high-end stores. And the mayor said, now we're getting serious.
This was straight up felony criminal conduct. To those who engaged in this criminal behavior, let's be clear. We are coming for you.
She's getting serious, David.
If there isn't a law that would make mayors liable when they are derelict in their duty to protect the citizens, there needs to be one.
Well, it's going to be an interesting and sad. If you've ever lived in Chicago, it's really, it could be a great city. Politically, it's always been a mess, but it's sad to see what's going on there now. But we don't want that to come to our country. You've written a book, BLITZ, Trump Will Smash the Left and Win. We're going through it because it's a very helpful book to me to understand succinctly the arguments on our side. And we're trying at the United West to get this information out to mobilize people to vote on November 3rd. In your afterword, you have the 9 biggest dangers to America from the anti-Trump left. I want to go through a few of these today and just have your thoughts on what you mean by these dangers and how you would update them probably 6 months after you wrote this. The first one is resistance, the anti-left resistance. What are you talking about?
My book, BLITZ, describes a meeting that took place 5 days after the 2016 election that was completely funded by George Soros. Pelosi was there, Elizabeth Warren, the Occupy Wall Street street communists were there. And they formed what they called a resistance to the administration, to the winners of the election. That should tell you right there why that's a threat to America. What we pride ourselves on most, and probably what's the most important part of our political system, is the peaceful transition of power, so that it's just understood as a part of American citizenship. You accept the results of an election. The Kennedy won because the Chicago Mafia stuffed the ballot boxes in Cook County. I mean, that's why he won. Nixon steps aside to preserve because he thought it would be too damaging to the country to contest the election. These people openly organized a resistance. If you'll recall, the Hamas terrorists who won the Women's March organized, they had something like 5 million demonstrators behind the slogan, "Not My President."
Monday was a U.S. holiday known as President's Day. But for thousands of anti-Trump militants, it was not my President's Day. They rallied here in New York and in more than 24 cities across the country to protest against the man who moved into the White House just 1 month ago.
I do believe his campaign colluded with the Russians, and if that is the case, he should be impeached and he should be locked up. We got to get him out of the White House. He doesn't belong there.
From Chicago to Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., demonstrators took aim at Trump's policies on immigration, abortion, climate change, and Russia, and his overall divisive statements.
This is what democracy looks like. Trump
this is what you call treason. This hasn't only happened once before in American history, which was the election of 1860, where they organized a resistance to Abraham Lincoln. The only reason that it's not a shooting, well, actually, it's becoming one, the shooting war, is because the federal government is so powerful. So if somebody actually had a formal army like California to pick a treasonous state, or Portland, the federal government would easily crush it. So what they're doing is they're making our cities ungovernable. I understand that they have a plan to have a siege of the White House, which is good. What it will do is it will do what this whole, 2 months of rioting, looting, violence has done. It exposes the left. It shows how powerful. I don't think people realized how powerful they were. And let's remember, they're being funded with hundreds of millions of dollars, not only from Soros, but from Nike and, the Ford Foundation and on and on. They've shown their teeth. And if they don't have enough power, which they don't, to actually pull off the coup d'etat that they also tried. I mean, Pelosi tried it with the impeachment process. And of course, Obama was behind that with spying on, not only spying on the Trump campaign, but using the intelligence agencies to cook up this fake dossier and fake accusation of collusion with Russia. That was a sabotage of American foreign policy, which means it was a sabotage of the interests of all Americans. For 3.5 years, they ran this, calling it a circus is way too benign. With a divided home front, for example, the charge that Trump was in Putin's pocket, for which there's no evidence whatsoever. There's much more evidence that Hillary Clinton collaborated with the KGB. But that tied the hands of the elected president in dealing with Russia and dealing with crises that Russia is involved in, Venezuela, North Korea, Syria. We had great economic leverage at the time and couldn't use it on the Russians, really, although Trump tried, because all of our enemies see what's going on, that we have an insurrection led by the Democrat Party. Everybody has to understand that. There wouldn't be a riot in American streets, or maybe there would have been one, if these Democrat mayors weren't aiding and abetting our domestic enemies. And it's not just the mayors, it's the governors. Gavin Newsom has released 18,000 criminals from California jails. It's just unreal.
Unbelievable.
Masks work. Why did they just put masks on the prisoners?
Yeah, exactly. If a mask works, put a mask on them and then keep them contained where they are.
So the resistance, in my view, was the greatest threat.
Well, yeah. And last night, we're at the 10th of August right now. Last night, Sunday night, Mark Levin had Attorney General Barr on, and basically discussing the same concept of this leftist resistance and movement in the country to indeed overthrow it. And Attorney General Barr brought up Rousseau, a Rousseauian movement here. Do we have the philosophical roots of a real revolution, or are these Black Lives Matter and Antifa, are they just disturbed kids, looking to have a party?
All of our enemies are supporting Black Lives Matter. It's a huge problem. Barr has done heroic stuff, but he makes the same mistake they all mistake. Peaceful protests have been hijacked. There are no peaceful protests. You look at Martin Luther King's marches, everybody's in a suit, nobody's looting, nobody's attacking police. It's quite the reverse in those days. And their leader insists on nonviolence, doesn't make He was denounced by Malcolm X because of that. It's not really difficult if you actually want to do a peaceful protest to dissociate yourself from these violent criminals and denounce them. It's not difficult to plan your demonstrations somewhere where they're not burning and looting. But they don't do it because the people in the peaceful protests, they just don't have the guts to be open criminals. They are sort of covered criminals supporting these people. There's no hijacking of these demonstrations. But, in Portland, it's in the 73rd day, I believe, of this attempt to destroy downtown Portland. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist if you're actually interested in peaceful protest to know what's going on, and that you shouldn't be helping it by providing a cover for it. There are no peaceful protests. That's a big lie.
All right, David, you've analyzed the resistance, one of the movements, one of the elements against Trump and all patriots. And ladies and gentlemen, one of the only ways to fight, the best way to fight this resistance is to get out on November 3rd and vote. We need, particularly in the state of Florida, we need evangelical Christians who have not been voting to get out and vote. Fight against this resistance by resisting the resistance and standing for the United States Constitution. Thank you very much, David Horowitz.